Obviously, a huge moment in the testimony inside of that courtroom today. Our Nick Neville joining us live for more on the details, the significance, rather, Nick, of those details that we just heard.
Right, Judy. So really a significant moment because, of course, you'll remember when Alec Murdaugh's first interview with investigators happened just hours after the murders. Investigators said and testified that he was clean, really from head to toe. And so this new Snapchat video revealing that he had different clothing on is a very significant moment. Now, we also want to talk about testimony that happened earlier today where we could see that Alec Murdaugh was at the scene of the double murders of his wife and son. Experts testifying that the timestamp of that video shows that he was there just minutes before they'd been shot. Now, this is another significant development because it potentially could shatter Murdaugh's alibi. He'd claimed in interviews with investigators that he was taking a nap at the main house at that time, and really the last time that he saw his wife and son was at dinner that evening. As video played in the courtroom, Alec could be seen crying, rocking back and forth. Paul made the recording on his phone for his friend Rogan Gibson, who was staying at the kennels at that time. His dog Cash could be seen in the video. Rogan was the last person Paul spoke to on the phone before he was murdered. The video came out during the testimony of Lieutenant Brett Dove, a SLED forensics expert. Prosecutors say the murders happened less than 5 minutes after that video was recorded. Earlier testimony this morning from Lieutenant Dove showed that Maggie and Paul both received texts at 8:49 p.m. that were never read. Dove also testified to phone activity and movement from Maggie, Paul, and Alec's phones, saying that Maggie's phone indicated 5 missed calls from Alec on the night of the murders, but both of those calls were missing from data that was pulled from Alec's phone.
So at some point between when those calls were placed on the night of June 7th and when you got the phone in September, those calls disappeared off that phone, correct?
Those calls are not on the phone anymore. Okay. How it happened, I don't know.
Okay. Did you do anything in your investigation, in your extraction or analysis to potentially remove those calls?
No, sir, I did not.
Gibson took the stand today and he said that the Murdaughs were really like a second family for him. Now, even though Paul recorded that video for his friend Rogan Gibson, he never saw that video until November of 2022. And when he was testifying today, Rogan was asked about the voices in that video, and he said he is 100% certain that the voices that he heard in that video were those of Maggie, Paul, and Alec Murdaugh. Now, Greg Adeline is standing by. He's been following all of this testimony along with me throughout the day. Greg, just tell us more about the significance of everything that we've learned today. Of course, the recent revelation with that Snapchat video and also Rogan Gibson's testimony.
Yeah, Nick, that Snapchat video happened on the night of the murders. It was before another video that was released earlier this afternoon, but the Snapchat video came from Paul Murdaugh to his friend Will Loving. It is short, but it shows Alec Murdaugh in a field. You could hear in the courtroom Alec Murdaugh weeping. A very different scene from anything that has been presented so far, at least in terms of evidence of this case. Alec Murdaugh weeping in a field wearing different clothing than what he was wearing when he sat down with investigators in the early morning hours of June 8th. That is very key because, as Nick mentioned, they are establishing that perhaps Alec Murdaugh changed those clothes. And so we are hoping to see that video. In the moment in the courtroom, you could kind of see it on those monitors that they have not been sharing publicly, but you saw how that video played out. A Snapchat video, again, showing Alec Murdaugh weeping. But earlier on, there was that video at the dog kennels, 8:44, that showed, or at least appeared to have Alec Murdaugh heard on that video along with Paul and Maggie Murdaugh checking on the status of a dog. That chocolate lab, Cash, that belongs to Rogan Gibson. Rogan Gibson took the stand earlier today and just talked about the circumstances surrounding all of that. He says that basically he and Paul Murdaugh had been talking on the phone, a conversation at 8:40, which prosecutors played, and you could hear on that phone call, again, confirmed, at least from witnesses that testified today, that Alec Murdaugh was heard on that phone call as well. They were talking about a plan to care for this dog. And in that plan, they mentioned possibly getting a video of it. That's the video that we saw earlier today at those kennels. And so when Rogan Gibson testified about that, it basically busted the alibi of Alec Murdaugh, who said that he was nowhere around that scene down at those dog kennels between 8 and 9 o'clock. Now, as the other person who took the stand moments ago, Will Loving, that Snapchat video, very compelling. You could call it a cliffhanger, but there was this moment in court where he also confirmed that he heard Alec Murdaugh on the video at the kennels. Take a listen.
Whose voices did you recognize on that video?
Paul Murdaugh, Maggie Murdaugh, and Alex Murdaugh.
And how sure are you?
100%.
The person whose voice you recognize on there that you identified as Alec Murdaugh, do you see him in the courtroom here today?
Yes, sir.
Can you point him out for the jury?
He's sitting right there.
Your Honor, please let the record reflect he's identified the defendant.
So back out live, two Murdaugh family friends from the stand testifying that Alec Murdaugh was on the scene literally 5 minutes from when the prosecutors say those murders happened on June the 7th, 2021. But again, the big bombshell earlier, just about 15 minutes ago, when prosecutors played that Snapchat video from earlier in the evening sent to Will Loving, dated just before 8 o'clock, of Alec Murdaugh in a field in different clothing than what he was wearing with investigators just a few hours later. That's the latest from here in Walterboro.